Yep, you read that right. This is not a drill. This is a Parasite Eve 2 video. Statistically, if you are subscribed to the channel or follow me on Twitch, it is likely because you watched one of my Nightmare 100% runs of the game. If that's the case, welcome in. In this video, we will talk at length about the game speedrun. But first, as it is tradition in this channel, we will briefly talk about the casual playthrough and go on some pointless tangents. Feel free to skip to the sections of your interest using the timestamp shown in the description. I have a deep sentimental attachment to Parasite Eve 2. This game was the reason I started streaming in the first place back in 2000 My decision to stream was to try and be the first person to beat Nightmare mode doing 100% kills in one sitting. We may make another video about the Nightmare Hundo speedrun, but the long and short of it is, my first finished run took about 7 hours, and recently player Leesin brought it down to 4 hours, 23 minutes and a few seconds. It's been awesome seeing what the new Nightmare 100% players can come up with, and I'm glad there's too much energy to run this amazing category. I sincerely believe Parasite Eve 2 aged like fine wine. This is the sequel to the Parasite Eve game, based on a science fiction horror novel written by my uncle Hideaki Sena. The game's sequel did not get as much praise as the original entry. But the strange thing is, everyone I talked to that played this game adored it. Yeah, I know, survivorship bias, but seriously, in case you haven't, you should give it a try. Compared to the first Parasite Eve, it is much more survival horror than RPG. Imagine the first 3 classic Resident Evils but with a bajillion guns, a huge diversity of enemies, a shopping system, and the main character also has a variety of superpowers. This game was made by Squaresoft toward the end of the PS1 life cycle, and they absolutely took the console's capability to its limits. The CGI is drop-dead gorgeous, with some extremely memorable cutscenes that are as beautiful as they are gory. The character movement is buttery smooth, and the combat wears its RPG influences on its sleeve, with enemies having strengths and weaknesses to different firearms and magic, and the damage being influenced by various factors like enemy distance, ammo, and your own HP. There is immense replay value because each time you beat the game you get one of 12 different ranking screens that allow you to buy different weapons and armors in the game's replay mode. And in higher difficulties, the less you use items and unlock magic, the more experience and money you can carry over to your next playthrough. This invites you to test how frugally you can play the entire game to maximize your next playthrough's rewards. Okay, so here in my script, note to self, we should make a leaderboard for highest BP scores in Nightmare mode. That would be awesome. Alright. But by far the best improvement compared to the first game is this. If you decide to do multiple playthroughs, you benefit from a technological marvel carefully crafted by the greatest Squaresoft developers. Cutscene skipping. Hey Parasite Eve 1 players, let's see you do this. Whoa. 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 And we're playing the game again.
I was a North American fall webworm in my past life. Those were the good old days. What were you in your former life?
Alright, story time. Get used to it. I first played this game when I was 8 years old, and my copy was in Japanese. I seriously thought this game was just target practice for 2 whole discs because I'd always picked the first option at the very start, until I decided out of curiosity to choose the second option instead and realized, oh my god, there's more game in this game. Today I am so comfortable with the Japanese version that I actually have a Nightmare 100% run of this game fully in Japanese. I also have another Japanese copy, but this one is the collector's edition that comes with the eye-shaped perfume bottle. Look how cute it is. But back when I was a kid, oh boy, beating this game to me was nothing short of a miracle. In case you're wondering, no, my 8-year-old self did not in fact speak Japanese. But to make matters worse, my PS1 reached a stage where it would only work if I flipped it upside down. Don't ask. But it doesn't stop there. I had this old tube TV with 3 little cord cables, you know the ones. This TV of course decided to stop displaying color altogether and I played the whole game black and white. Viewer, I finished many games like Parasite Eve 2, Silent Hill, and Tony Hawk's 3 and 4 in black and white TV. But despite all of these hurdles, after many months of playing, I reached the final boss, which obviously I was stuck at because fuck this fight casually. While I was stuck, I bought this godforsaken cursed Toy Story game. The game itself was really fun, but some genius dev had this brilliant idea and here, it's better if I show you. Check this out. When you go to the memory card section, you can actually choose which slot you'd like to save your game on. And me being the absolute moron 8-year-old that I was, I of course didn't know what I was doing. I just saw the icons of my favorite games in my memory card and I thought, hey, that's so cool. Look, I see Aya's face here. Let's click on it and see what happens. Which caused me to override my save file and lose everything. But fortunately, I got over this core memory. Hold on a second. In case you're wondering how I managed to beat the game with this level of intelligence, well, clearly I use walkthroughs. What, you think I'd figure out the laboratory puzzle by myself? Have you seen the puzzle solution? Have you met any 8-year-olds? I was an idiot. The only reason I went as far as I did was thanks to the help of the Brazilian magazine Some Games. I went down on an internet rabbit hole to chase down the copy of the magazine that I used back then. I found a scan of the page on retroscans.org by painstakingly looking at every single scanned edition of the magazine, one by one. That walkthrough was like some strange cosmic punishment to me because some of the puzzles were described in colors, which weren't really helpful for me. So I looked for another walkthrough on the internet only to discover that either every single Brazilian had copied that stupid fucking walkthrough, or, more likely, the magazine guys copied the walkthrough from the internet and credited it as their own. But it's okay. I'm over this at this point. Hold on a second. Also, fun fact about the Ação Games magazine. This magazine, whose primary target audience were good-for-nothing kids with single-digit IQs like me, with advertisements for toys and everything, always had a section called Game da Gata, where they'd reach out to a famous Brazilian model to pose for a photo and sign it for the fans, and well, you can see what kind of photo this is. The magazine's not very consistent on its content, but if there's one thing you can bet on, is that every edition has a picture of that edition's Game da Gata. Oh, and speaking of bouncy mode, if you play Parasite Eve 2, there's probably one thing you should remember. A scene that stood the test of time and created millions of core memories in the minds of impressionable players.
Which is made our good boy Flint. Oh!
Parasite Eve 2 has some iconic characters with great personalities. Our main character Aya is a badass agent, who's as deadly with guns as she is with her crazy magical abilities powered by some highly caffeinated mitochondria. She's self-conscious about her superpowers, so she often pursues missions on her own. I like that the official strategy guide describes her as a strikingly beautiful 28-year-old who deals with her emotions like a good American in the shooting range. Eve is a tiny clone of Aya who had to endure unspeakable experiments. As a result, she's shy, reserved, and puts all her guards up, but eventually warms up to us when we finally convince her that we're on her side. Aya's best friend Jody is quirky and bubbly, and can shred you to pieces because of her firearms expertise. Her role is mostly being stuck at Miss Armory, nerding out about guns and ammo. However, when push comes to shove, she shows up to a monster-infested shelter with no hesitation to help us when she learns that we're in danger. Our partner Rupert acts as a sort of mentor figure. He and I go way back, so he's always there to protect us in times of distress and gives us some of the best loot in the game. The Acropolis Tower, which serves as a tutorial dungeon, is a whole adventure between the two of us, and at the end, despite his injury, he's still willing to part ways with his favorite weapon just to help our journey. He has a deep-seething hatred for the game's monsters, called NMCs, because rumor has it that his daughter was killed by one of them. Pierce is our agency's local tech expert. He's a scaredy cat, but his heart's in the right place. He helps us with the shooting range to prepare for dangerous missions, and he's an expert in both computers and molecular biology. At a certain point in the game, we come to his rescue, and we're handsomely rewarded with a good ending. He's a fun guy to be around, and he spends his free time riding his SUV on the mountain range. Douglas is the grumpy cowboy who runs the Dryfield Motel and is always there to lend a hand when we need something, whether it's a wrench or a car. His selflessness really shows us that behind all the toughness is a soft, doughy heart. There are rumors that his vast weapons collection come from his possible participation in the Dryfield Underground Militia. But regardless, he always shows kindness to Aya, a total stranger. And Kyle's there too, but frankly, who cares? But everybody unanimously loved this furry friend who melts our hearts as soon as we trade looks with his beautiful pixelated eyes.
An anemone or clematis plant's juice can cause a rash. When pruning them, it's a good idea to wear gloves.
We treat doggos in stories the same way we do in real life. Here I'm of course talking about the normal dogs, not the mutated kinds. We love them unconditionally, and their presence provides us with safety and relief in otherwise stressful situations. The survival horror genre is no stranger to furry friends. From Huey in Haunted Ground to Brown in Rule of Rose, these good boys are there to help the main character progress through their struggles, and they serve as a resource and sometimes even as a weapon. When we are given choices on how to interact with them, we are rightfully rewarded when we treat them well, and we're punished otherwise. Protecting these lovable goofballs at all costs is a rule that goes without saying. Our love for them shall be as unconditional as their love for us, and Parasite Eve 2's good boy is no exception. Flint's the loyal companion of Dryfield Motel owner Mr. Gary Douglas. We're first introduced to him when we arrive in Dryfield. He kindly escorts us to his pet human who helps us get to the shelter. Oh, and fun fact, you can actually race him to the door, and depending who arrives first, the cutscene is slightly different. This actually matters in speedruns because you want to get there first to skip the cutscene as early as possible. Flint functions as the motel's tour guide. He shows us the location of various items and where to use them as we make progress. While he shares the battlefield with us in some cases, he cannot be injured and mostly stays there for moral support. That is, until night falls and danger decides to lurk in the shadows. Ooh. At a certain point in the game, Mr. Douglas kindly lends us the key to room 6 to spend the night. Hold on, sorry, I don't know who put this video here. Unfortunately, our beauty slumber is interrupted when a giant, elephant-like monster with a flamethrower in his mouth decides to take the stroll to the motel, leaving a trail of destruction in his path. The burner boss marks roughly the midpoint of the game, and if you are as young as I was in your first playthrough, you probably struggled a lot with this fight. Burner has a massive amount of health, which makes this fight feel like an endurance run. To make things worse, your performance in this fight will decide how the rest of your game plays out. You see, if you are unable to take 2/3 of the burner's HP in less than 3 minutes, he throws a hissy fit and leaves the motel. However, if you are able to do this damage, you have to finish him off and he melts like a butter in a fry pan. In a cruel decision by the game's writers, failing to kill the burner in time means Flint gets killed in the altercation. If that happens, we're forced to watch one of the saddest cutscenes in PlayStation 1 history. Or at least that's what I've been told, cause I never did it. And if you did, you'll probably be unable to live with yourself after that, and you shouldn't. Bad player! The route where Flint dies will give you a consolation prize in the form of an armor called the Chicken Plate, which provides an additional 60 HP and the Resist Impact feature. Conversely, defeating the burner under the time limit causes Mr. Douglas to thank you for saving his best friend, for which he rewards you with the worst weapon in the game, the M950. Supposedly a machine gun that uses the same ammo as their starting weapon, but can hold 100 rounds and is so slow. Flint surviving means he returns later in the game because we can make an optional detour back to Dryfield. If we do that, he'll kindly lead us to our injured friend Pierce, allowing us to save him from certain death, which uncovers a chain of events that leads us to the game's good ending. At the end of the game, he brings us a message from Douglas and an MP boost too. Thank you, Flint. At this point, we can also give him a teddy bear with Eve's scent, so he helps us track her, prompting him to walk along with us. During the search, we run into a blind soldier, and if Flint is by our side, we'll instead ask him to guide the soldiers to safety, which gives us extra items in the shop to prepare for the game's final fights and the final boss. But my favorite part is if you get the good ending, you get to see the epilogue for each character accompanied by a photo with their name and signature. When you get to Douglas and Flint, you see he has his little paw print signature too. Aww. Considering all the perks we receive, saving Flint is not only the morally obvious choice but the utilitarian one as well. The fact that his survival is a consequence of a fast boss fight also means that we have to do this on speedruns, making every successful run another playthrough where we save our favorite boy, right? Well... This video is a story about Parasite Eve 2 speedruns, but unfortunately, I need to start by saying that it's somewhat of a dead speed game, though it doesn't have to be. Like, you can still run it of course, but it is in a bit of a strange limbo where players who don't own a PS2 have many ways to run it but little standardization. Let me elaborate on that.
You wouldn't be trying to give yourself a bogus score using some ingenious trick, would you? That's just about as low as anyone could possibly stoop. I can't believe you sometimes.
I may be biased, but I think Parasite Eve 2 is an absolute blast to run. It has a lot of RNG, very technical execution, and you need to think very fast to quickly adapt to what the bosses do. I obviously love running the game, but here's the problem. The game doesn't have a native PC port, which means any player who does not own a console has to resort to emulation. You can play Parasite Eve 2 on a PS1, PS2, PS Vita, and a PSP, with most players choosing the PS2 for the fastest loading times. At this day and age, not only are all of the consoles expensive, they also require physical space to set up everything you need to stream attempts. Conversely, PS1 emulators are super optimized, and anyone with a laptop with average specs can simultaneously emulate and stream the game with no issues. This is great news for players with more limited resources. Emulation, however, opens up a whole new can of worms. You see, for most of this game's lifespan, players would run on an EPS-XE, which for a long time was the most mature PS1 emulator out there. The problem is that EPS-XE emulated the game terribly in almost every aspect. The load times were very fast, but in order to make the game run without slowdowns in certain areas, you have to play it on low resolution, low specs, and setting up the correct plugins was an infuriating guessing game. If you didn't know where to look for setup tutorials, you'd probably think the game was unplayable. Then, in 2020, humanity was graced with mankind's greatest invention since penicillin. The Duckstation emulator is awesome. It was programmed from the ground up with Qt, and its development is still active to this day. You can just open the game's ISO and play it off the bat. No config required, no plugins, no nothing. The emulator has a ton of cool features like retro achievements and tools to put HD textures on games. You can also upscale the game with barely any effect on performance, make your runs as beautiful as they are smooth. The release of Duckstation back in 2020 bred new life to the Parasite Eve 2 speedrunning community, and there was a small window of time in 2021 where runs were being submitted frantically. This time is to this day the peak of Twitch stream viewership for the game. New players had eyes on the run, and during this sprint, players even came up with fresh new strategies, over 5 years since major contributions were made to the game's route. Which is why it truly pains me to say that Duckstation also caused some major complications. First, it was obvious from the get-go that Duckstation was slower than DPSXE. This wouldn't be an issue for any percent, which is about 6 minutes slower. But the game also has a 100% category, which is about 4 hours long on New Game and almost 5 hours long on Nightmare difficulty. In 2021, the emulator was about 10% slower than EPSXE, which would mean an extra 20-ish minutes of additional load times to an already long and exhausting run where you can't let your guard down for even a second. To this day, no one has submitted a 100% run on Duckstation on default load speed, but the category does exist. The second problem is that Duckstation is in active development, and a new update rolls out almost every month, certainly almost every time I open the program. I can't pinpoint the exact update, but there were at least 2 that drastically changed loading times and sort of made many existing runs redundant. The first was around early 2022. A typical Duckstation run went from 1 hour and 23 minutes to 1 hour and 19 minutes with a single update. It was good that we had a faster version, but bad that everyone who had a PB up to this point will have to get another PB on a potentially worse playthrough. This also raised the question of how long it would take for another update to roll and mess with the load times, which inevitably it did. The second update, however, caused the loads to increase, so if I play with the latest Duckstation release as of writing, I will be losing time compared to the older versions. This can be easily verified by using the game's all-door splitter and noticing that we bleed time in every room despite doing identical lines. Okay, so we're gonna do a live demo here. On your left, you're seeing the split times for my current PB on New Game any percent, which is 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 43 seconds. This PB was obtained on an older version of Duckstation, which is version 6461, 0.1-6461, which is a March 2024, so a very old version. Right now, the game is running on version 11580, which is the most recent version as of July 2026. The auto splitter still works. It's the same auto splitter, splits at exactly the same doors. It's pretty awesome how the auto splitter just carries over between versions. So let's just start the game and see what happens. What happens with my times in each one of the doors as I play the game on this most recent version compared with the older one. So first thing to notice is that this first split is as straightforward as it gets. So we're just gonna go through 3 doors and not do anything else. Normally some players do the menu here, like where we switch the cursor from memory to standard, which is a little, makes the playthrough a little more comfortable, but I don't do that. I do this menu when we get to firearms. So really, the split comparison I'm doing here is just going through doors. And as you can see, we're already losing 1.2 seconds. So here we're gonna do the menu. Pretty good menu. As fast as I could do it. I'm really trying to do this as fast as possible to minimize the effect of like me playing poorly on the time losses. But again, this second split is also super straightforward. Just go to firearms, come back and talk to Pierce. And we're already like 2 seconds behind. Nothing that I did there justifies like a almost 2-second time loss. The beginning was just super straightforward. So what I want to do is we're going to skip over the steps a little bit, but I'm going to play until we get the blue key, and let's just see how much time I bleed. Alright, so we're 8 seconds behind. 8.4 now. Pretty standard playthrough, no major mistakes, nothing really stood out. We're just basically losing time from door to door. And that's how we fell behind. There's absolutely no explanation for this much time loss, except the possibility that loads have become longer between those 2 versions that I'm playing. So, QED, I guess. I hypothesize that the Duckstation load times either emulates PS2 or PS1. But they reverted to PS1 emulation in later updates because increased speed may have broken some games. There are solutions to mitigate this, such as locking a fixed version of the emulator for speedrunning. But there was no official ruling for moderation on the issue yet, and I guess any version seems to be fair game so far. There is also a setting in Duckstation that allows us to speed up loading times. If you go to Settings, Console, and change the seek speed up to Maximum Safe or Infinite in older versions, the game's loads are drastically reduced, and Parasite Eve 2 specifically seems to run normally from start to finish. Transitions between camera angles and door loads become almost instant. As a result, a typical 80% run can be done about 10 minutes faster, making it the fastest way to play the game to this day, even surpassing EPSXE. But the problem is that some parts of the game have minor visual glitches, and the game is known to crash randomly in some extremely rare instances. But what's worse this setting meant players would technically have to tamper with unsafe settings. Even the emulator says as much at the start of the game. It doesn't feel quite right to run with this setting, but I've completed multiple runs playing like this, and it would theoretically future-proof the loading issue because they are brought down to a minimum. There is a separate category for max seek speed up on the leaderboard, and it's the preferred way to play a 100% run so far, as it's the least exhausting way to complete this extremely long run. There was some back and forth about this setting, but at this point we just let sleeping dogs lie with a separation of categories. A possible solution to future-proof Duckstation runs for updates is to change the way we time the game. The current timing method is real time, so we start when we click new game and we stop as soon as Eve is defeated. The timer never stops. A little known fact, however, is that Parasite Eve 2 does have an in-game timer. We don't see it when we finish the game, but we do see it, for example, when we save it. We can build cheat engine tools to actually visualize the IGT when running the game on an emulator. In fact, player Toxic TT did build tools that allow you to see your IGT on the PSXC. Using that, we can clearly see that it stops whenever the game loads new rooms or new camera angles. This means that we could have a single leaderboard for all emulators and the updates to Duckstation will no longer matter. The downside of this approach is that this game's IGT is way too forgiving. It pauses in menus, it pauses when battles are triggered, and it pauses in result screens. In other words, there would be no incentive to do menus fast. We could pause willy-nilly, and mistakes in Javelin Glitches or accidentally triggering fights would have no repercussion in the final time, which seems to go against our philosophy of finishing the game fast. Honestly, the issue of pausing in speedruns is a tale as old as time, but in this game specifically it's more about pausing while you're technically playing the game with menus, so it gets a little worse. The final possible solution to all these issues would be to develop a load remover timer which would stop whenever the game had a loading state on. We know this is recorded because the IGT stops in loads, so we will only need to find the boolean flag that represents loading and stop incrementing the timer when the flag is true. This would also allow us to play at any seek speed up in any emulator, and I believe anyone who develops such a tool will shed new life onto the game speedrunning community. When big popular speed games are released, such as new Resident Evils or say Hollow Knight's Silksong, the community quickly develops these tools. It only requires intelligent minds to understand the game's memory behavior, which unfortunately is something no one did yet for this game. But who knows what the future holds. I know my way around cheat engine and even developed some auto-splitting and timing tools for Fatal Frame 3 and Silent Hill 3, but the Duckstation memory management was always very strange to me. I could never figure out what variables are stored on emulated games. This is made worse by the fact that updates often break the logic of the auto-splitter, so any developer would have to also maintain the LRT and check if any updates cause it to break. A lot to ask for a game with so few runners. Note that these struggles exist solely among players that don't own a PS2, and since the year 2000, console players had to worry about none of these issues because their load times never changed. We will revisit the issue of timing later in the video. For now, I will kindly ask you to very generously assume that everyone who plays the game has a similar common timing method. Just bear with me. This assumption will allow us to focus mostly on the route, but we will come back to this topic after discussing the route. This is the quest to become the top dog in Parasite Eve 2 Nightmare Any Percent, and saving Flint while we're at it.
I hear it's amazing when the famous purple stuffed worm in Flapjaw Space with the tuning fork does a raw blink on Harry Carey Rock. I need scissors. 61.
There really isn't much you need to know about PE2 Speedruns except this. Besides doing all the game progression tasks as fast as possible, there are 9 bosses and a few mandatory fights, so you need to decide what guns to get and what magic to unlock to do these fights as fast as possible. Bosses in this game have huge amounts of HP, so routing this game requires figuring out what weapons and ammo to use on each, and which extra fights, if any, should we do to unlock stronger magic or farm money for items in the shop. For the speedrun, there are only 3 parasite energies that are essential: Pyrokinesis, Necrosis, and Energy Shot, which you can unlock and level up with experience points you gain by winning fights. Pyrokinesis is basically a Hadouken fireball that costs little MP and causes very high damage. The game gives us the first level of this magic for free, and in the run's first fights you can drastically lower most enemies and bosses' HP by just spamming Pyro. As the game progresses, this strategy becomes less sustainable, either because bosses resist fire magic, or because their HPs are so large that it's not worth spending the MP, which is where the other 2 PEs come in. Necrosis inflicts poison status that cause continuous small damage every few seconds. The damage also interrupts a few attacks, making some fights much safer. Necrosis DPS depends on the magic level, but more importantly on the boss's max HP, so for bosses like Burner or Eve, whose max HP is gigantic, the damage dealt by keeping them poisoned throughout the fight really adds up. The final and perhaps most important magic is Energy Shot. It increases both the damage and crit rate of our firearms, and casting it twice increases the damage boost by an additional 10% in every level. With the exception of the 2 number 9 fights, we use Energy Shot in every boss fight. It is an essential PE that by the end of the run almost everyone has bumped to level 3. There's an honorable mention to Plasma. which we need in 2 fights, but level 1 is more than sufficient. The first is to use on the giant bowman to cancel Eve's antibody cast on him, and the second is to kill the ivory stalker for the Spartans it drops, though the second fight depends whether you choose the Spartan route. The question here is when to unlock and/or level up which magic at which point in the game. For example, on the new game any percent route, I like to unlock Pyro 2 before dry fuel number 9, which helps me with that fight, the Zebra Stalker fight in the gas station, the Blizzard Chaser, Glutton 1, and the generators. In short, my rough PE route is Pyro 2 on dry fuel number 9, Necrosis 1 and Energy Shot 1 on Burner, Plasma and Energy Shot 2 on Blizzard Chaser, and Energy Shot 3 on the Giant Bowman. Player Sigma 88's route, on the other hand, opts to not buy Pyro 2 at all. This allows skipping a few optional fights in exchange for longer and more precise mandatory fights. There are other schools of thought, like players who prefer to stun lock Burner instead of using Necrosis, and other minor variations to the PE route. I cannot guarantee that my route is the fastest. I do a few extra fights in it. The exploding babies at the general store, the bats in the parking, 2 zebra stalkers in dry field night, and the ivory stalker in the shelter entrance. We do this to gain more experience and BP, but we choose fights in rooms that we revisit. This way, the time lost doing the fights is recovered by the trips we do on the same room. Because my route gives more experience and BP, I can buy Pyro 2 for dry field number 9 and buy an extra 4 grenades at Douglas. This gives me extra ammo to kill phase 2 Glutton, which is both faster and gives us an extra eau de toilette to increase our damage at the Puppet Stinger. I ran P2 on EPSXE to more objectively assess if my route was better. I got a 1:13.56, a 48-second improvement over Sigma's. And while it's difficult to separate good execution from a better route, my lines are absolute trash, so there's no way this wasn't due to just better routing. But we're not here to talk about new game 80%. The big boys crank the game's difficulty all the way up, which is exactly what we do. Let's move on to Nightmare difficulty.
Variety level 13. Rescue Meryl, the return of Ginola.
Finishing the game for the first time gives you access to harder difficulties, in addition to the replay mode, which is just for you to buy cool weapons and demolish everything. The first hard mode you unlock is Bounty mode, where some fights are replaced with harder enemies that appear later in the game, and doing these fights gives you great loot like protein capsules, lipsticks, and even late game weapons. To unlock the next difficulty, you need to obtain at least 69,000 experience in one playthrough, which awards you Scavenger mode. Oh, and fun fact, Scavenger is actually called Supportless mode in the Japanese version of the game, which is how I was first introduced to this difficulty. You can actually unlock Scavenger in your first playthrough, but you need to kill every single enemy in the game and even some Eve clones in order to cross the 69,000 XP threshold. Otherwise, a 100% run on Bounty mode will safely get you across the finish line, even if you kill the final boss the simplest possible way. Scavenger is similar to a typical new game, except you start with 10 MP, enemies do more damage, shops sell you basically no weapons and only basic items like pepper sprays, combat lights and flares, and most of the rewards you typically get on new game are gone. Oh yeah, when speaking of Scavenger mode, I am legally obligated to say that if you start the mode with enough money from your previous playthroughs, you can buy the medicine wheel after the tower, and if you equip it when fighting dry field number 9, you drop the gunblade. If you watch Sigma's Scavenger any % run and you see him walking around with a giant sword, this is why. Finally, if you finish Scavenger mode, you unlock the infamous Nightmare mode. This mode is called Deadly mode in the Japanese version, but we'll henceforth call it Nightmare mode, just for simplicity. The description reads, you start off sick and things get worse in this most difficult mode, and man you can say that again. In Nightmare mode, all your damage is reduced to 60% of its original value, your HP is cut in half, and enemies do triple the damage in addition to your half HP. These nerfs combined mean that, unless you bump your HP through your run, almost everything will kill you with 1 or 2 hits. But wait, there's more. Just like in Bounty mode, many of the harder enemies appear much earlier in the game, so you'll be facing multiple golems as early as in Acropolis, often mixed up with regular enemies in combinations you don't see in your first playthrough. And just like in Scavenger mode, most shops sell you way fewer weapons and ammo, and the rewards you typically get on New Game or Bounty mode are also significantly nerfed. Some of the Bounty mode fights still drop good rewards despite the nerfs, such as new weapons, good ammo, or protein capsules to bump your HP, but some of this loot is also only useful later in the game, like M4A1 attachments that you can only use once you get your first chance to buy the M4A1, which is either by visiting Douglas after Glutton in Disc 2, or, if you don't visit Dryfield, you have to wait all the way to the military, before the final boss, to get this very basic weapon that's typically available in your first shop. I love Nightmare runs because of how punishing they are. For most of the runs, one small mistake or some bad luck, and you're instantly killed and the run dies. These are usually the runs I'm drawn to. This keenness for pain and suffering is something my therapist and I are still trying to understand, and I hope we eventually do. There was a time in 2015 where the PE2 speedrunning community was actually very vibrant. This was shortly after the speedrun.com site created the leaderboard. At that sprint, players mostly focused on new game any percent and nightmare any percent, establishing routes that would remain unchanged for a long time because, well, nobody else bothered to revisit them. The biggest challenge in routing a nightmare run is basically, what extra fights do you do? And the questions to ponder are: 1. What do you get out of this fight? How much time does it save? 2. How big is the detour to reach the fight? And 3. How long does it take to do the fight? If the answer to the first question makes up for the cost of the last two, then that fight should be part of your route. Some fights worth noting are: in Acropolis, the first night golem you run into drops a PE2, Spartan rounds, and a protein capsule. After the pod service gantry, there is a night golem that drops the mongoose in the B1 hall. Not far from it, in the access tunnel, another night golem drops 25 magnum rounds for the mongoose. You can get the mongoose at the end of the game for free, but not the magnum rounds. At the start of the shelter, in the breeding room, a night golem drops the pike, which is a flamethrower attachment for the M4A1. After defeating the beta generator, a night golem at Newark drops the Javelin, a laser attachment for the M4A1. It only does 100 points of damage. It's probably not that useful. Once you reach the military and spawn the last batch of fights in the game, if you backtrack all the way to the beta generator fight room, a bishop golem drops the M249, 25 Maeda rounds and a lipstick, a huge loot that the game almost requires you to take down the final boss fight. Besides this fight, you can also use BP to buy the PE2 and the grenade pistol from Douglas, and you only have access to the M4A1 in the shop at the end of the game. These are the only weapons you'll be able to buy unless you rescue the blind soldier with Flint. Your free weapons throughout the game are the starting M93R, the P229 you get after the Blizzard Chaser, and Rupert gives you the mongoose at the military with 25 Maeda rounds. You also get free 9mm Hydra ammo before Glutton for both the M93R and the P229. And before the end of Disc 1, you can get the M950 from Douglas if you save Flint. You could buy the M4A1 earlier by taking a detour to Dryfield after the Glutton fight, but that detour takes an extremely long time, and would only help you at the Giant Bowman fight. So we can basically establish that this is not worth unless you also fight the breeding room golem that gives you the pike. Before we devise a strategy, it's important to stud every Nightmare 80% run to take notes on what's useful. So let's take a moment to make some literature research before we delve into our own route. We'll emphasize everything each runner does outside of the mandatory route. That is, what extra fights they do, if any, what they buy and when, where they unlock their PEs, and which weapons and magic are used for each boss. The first run we'll look at is the EPSXE World Record, which completes the game in 1 hour, 33 minutes and 15 seconds. This run is 10 years old at time of writing, but remains a record to this day on that emulator. Player Sigma88 devised a route that set some solid strats for every boss. These runs served at the very least as proofs of principle that we didn't need to take many detours to finish the game, though there were still quite a few. Let's break down the key points of Sigma's run. At Acropolis, Sigma picks up the MP Boost 2 in the trash, the Tactical Vest, and the MP5A5 on the Dead Soldier. The MP5A5 requires some time to pick up and equip, but given the damage we do, it's worth the hassle to avoid us doing single digit per M93R burst and dragging the number 9 fight on forever. Back at Mist, Sigma picks up all the loot from Acropolis, MP Boost 2, Pepper Spray, a Ringer solution that is traded for the MP5, and a belt pouch that is traded for the Tactical Vest. Heading to Dryfield, when Sigma sees Douglas for the first time, he buys a PE2, 1 Combat Light, and 1 Flare. Sigma then opens the menu to attach the Combat Light and the Flare. Sigma finds a Mind Suckler with a super cool Flare and Pyro strat. At the underpass, Sigma makes a huge detour to go to the cellar and pick up the Snail magazine for the PE2. By my calculation, this detour takes an extra 40 seconds. Not to mention this is where the Combat Light is used, so we also need to add the time for that menu. The Snail attachment is an upgrade that gives the PE2 an additional 25 bullets, going from 7 to a whooping 32. Sigma picks up the Cola and the Recovery 3 in the general store. On the mandatory menu before Dryfield number 9, Sigma equips the PE2 with the Snail, attaches the Cola, the Pepper Spray, and the MP Boost 2, and he also buys Energy Shot 1. Since Sigma doesn't buy Pyro 2, this fight is done with 9 Pyros, and the rest of the HP is taken by lighting number 9 Choke Aya. If his HP is less than 366 at this point, Aya fires a Pyro on him and finishes the fight, but this animation costs 8 seconds. Fast forward to Dryfield Night, Sigma does the bunny fight with only Pyro 1 and no extra MP boost, then picks up the Holy Water in the lot. When attached, the Holy Water decreases the damage taken by hits, which is extra important in Nightmare to prevent several attacks from killing you in one shot. Sigma then opens the menu right away and equips the Holy Water, which prevents you from dying from the Zebra Stalker's swipes. In that same menu, he buys Necrosis 1 and 2. In the Jerrycan menu, Sigma buys Healing 1. The burner fight is done with Necrosis and PE2 stun locks. The snail magazine makes the fight slightly quicker before you need to reload fewer times. Before heading to Disc 2, Sigma makes a stop at Douglas to pick up the M950, which takes about 50 seconds. For the Blizzard Chaser, Sigma equips the M950 and buys Energy Shot 2, and the whole fight is done with the M950 and 1 pepper spray. In the Shelter, Sigma goes all the way to the armory to buy the Combat Armor, which grants you plus 40 HP and plus 10 MP. The backtracking for this costs another 30 seconds. Before Gluten 1, Sigma picks up the Hydras, which in this difficulty is a very smart thing to do. Then he opens the menu to equip the PE2 with Hydras, equip the new armor, use the belt pouch, and reattach shields in the Holy Water. The Gluten fight is done entirely with the PE2. In Phase 2, Sigma does 1000 units of damage and lures the boss to the Panini Press. Now Sigma backtracks to get the Medicine Wheel, an attachment that grants extra item drops in some fights. The backtracking costs another whole minute. His new arc is very similar to a typical new game run, except the generated fights is done by shooting the machines from a distance with the PE2, then spamming pyros on the boss in a position where fireballs do double damage. Before Puppet Stinger, Sigma opens the menu to attach the M950 and the Medicine Wheel, and to buy Metabolism 1 and Plasma 1. The boss fight itself is done with the classic strat of Necrosis stun locks, shooting with Spartans, and hitting Eve with the Plasma to ward off the antibody. Because of the Medicine Wheel, Sigma gets an extra Eau de Toilette here. In the military, Sigma buys 2 pepper sprays and maxes out the 5.56 rifle ammo. Now the most important part. After the military, Sigma goes all the way back to the beta generator room to fight a Night Golem that dropped the M249 and 25 Maeda rounds. This backtracking takes a whooping 6 minutes from going down the B1 elevator to going back to the pod service gantry. For the Brahm fight, Sigma equips the M249, attaches the Mongoose with Maeda rounds and buys antibody. The fight consists of destroying the left shoulder with the M249, pyroing, then using the Mongoose shots to take out 3500 HP from the core. The E fight is brilliant. Sigma has 2 Eau de Toilettes to use here. One taken on the lab and one dropped by the Puppet Singer. Sigma buys Healing 2 on the menu to use the card. For the fight, he stays in the bridge to bait the attack where he falls from the sky, which gives us a small vulnerability window to do massive damage to her. To prevent her from flying off, which kills you instantly, Sigma uses Necrosis, which also stuns her in place and inflicts poison that does 192 damage per tick. In particular instances, Sigma switches to the Mongoose and inflicts massive crits on Eve. Overall, beautiful fight to watch. A very interesting thing about Sigma's run is he skips the grenade pistol entirely. This means he makes no use of the 4 grenades you can pick up at Acropolis, the 4 air bursts dropped by the burner, the 8 grenades in the sterilization room box, and the other 4 grenades dropped by Glutton 1. He does pick up the Medicine Wheel after Glutton, which takes almost 1 minute to just get it alone. And as far as I can tell, the only thing he got out of it was an extra Eau de Toilette at the Giant Boma. I used to think at first that the Medicine Wheel was necessary to get the M249 or the Maeda rounds, but the website kuro-rpg.net/map/PE2, an amazing resource for this game by the way, shows me that the only extra you get at the Bishop Golem fight is a lipstick, which he doesn't even pick up. Honestly, I really don't think the time saved from using additional extra Eau de Toilette justify the 1 minute detour. But I think the logic here is to absolutely minimize your odds of dying or running out of ammo in the Eve fight. The next run we'll look at is Naga's PS2 Glitchless run. Naga is a Japanese PS2 player that has posted amazing runs in every any % category except for Bounty. In 2021, they posted a 142.40 run on PS2. Note that the PS2 runs are about 6 minutes slower than their EPS-XE counterparts. So even being very generous, this is a worse run than Sigma's. But I often learn a lot from analyzing the way other players think, even if their time is not at the absolute top. So let's dissect the route they devised. In Acropolis, Naga picks up the tactical vest and the grenades. Naga also does a quick fight in the staircase with an injured stranger for some extra experience and BP. Naga buys Plasma 1 right after the 8 chases with an extra menu. Plasma is used to kill the bats in the well and the babies in the general store. Naga buys the grenade pistol and 4 riots when asking Douglas for the wrench. Naga buys Pyro 2 before driving number 9 and fights him with 6 Pyros and, instead of using an MP recovery, gets grabbed by him, just like Sigma. This is awesome. That saves an MP boost. Naga does not use any MP recoveries on the bunnies, instead resorting to M93R burst, meaning that so far no MP recoveries were used. Naga opens the menu before the parking bats to equip the grenade pistol and buy Necrosis 1 and kills the bats with a riot shot and the Necrosis. Naga buys 3 pepper sprays before asking Douglas for the card that makes him give you the lobby key. Naga actually found a way to avoid the 2 bowmen fight in the main street. Whoa! Okay, I need to take note of that. Naga gets the Holy Water just like Sigma. Naga unlocks Energy Shot 1 when using the Jerry Can. Naga completely ignores the PE2, killing the burner with Necrosis 1 and M93R bursts. They use both the MP Boost 2 and the Colon burner. The fight takes an insanely long time with this route, and I'm not sure why this choice was made. Naga then goes to room 5 to get the extra belt pouch and do the quick fight where 7 scared scavengers are lit on fire in the bathroom. In the menu before the Blizzard Chaser, Naga buys healing and energy shot too, and interestingly fights the bats that spawn from the bridge. I'm really getting the impression that Naga really has a thing for fighting bats, what the heck? After fighting the Blizzard Chaser, Naga makes an extra menu to equip the P229 and flash the spider, teehee, then makes a big detour in the shelter to buy the combat armor, just like Sigma. Naga gets the 8 grenades in the sterilization room box and drops the old armor and other useless items like the GPS and the Tonfa baton. I like that. I think this is a smart thing and I do that too. After fighting Glutton 2, Naga backtracks to pick up the medicine wheel just like Sigma. In New York, Naga buys Energy Shard 3 right before the first generator. With that, 2 grenades are needed to destroy the computers from a distance. I think this menu is worth doing actually. In the Puppet Stinger menu, Naga switches to the P229 with Spartans and attaches the medicine wheel just like Sigma. Naga also buys Antibody 1, but I think this is just to bump the MP back. Unlike Sigma though, Naga uses the First Soul the Toilet right at the Puppet Stinger fight, instead of saving it for Eve. At the Eve room, Naga picks up an extra Ringer solution and a protein capsule while Eve's being a little shit. In the military, Naga does the same menu as Sigma, 2 pepper sprays and 800 units of the M4A1 ammo. The backtracking to New York to fight the Bishop Golem and get the M249 is also the same. On PlayStation 2, it takes a whooping 6.5 minutes. The Braum fight is the same as Sigma, M249 for the bulk of the damage, pepper spray and mongoose for the core, except Naga uses 2 pepper sprays instead of 1 because why not? For Eve, Naga just gets hit by the teleports and tanks the damage. The fight is overall very similar to Sigma's, but more mongoose heavy. A clever trick Naga uses is to fire the pepper sprays at Eve if she does a cross the bridge teleport attack. Both Naga and Sigma's runs have beautiful Eve fights if anything else. This is an extremely hard fight made extra challenging when you barely have any resources, and these guys played it beautifully. So that's it. These are the 2 Nightmare 80% runs we have to work with. There are no more strategies we can borrow, or anything else that could what the hell, you know where this is going, don't you?
Brighton, something happened to me last Thursday when I was driving home. I had a couple of miles to go. I looked up and saw a glowing orange object in the sky, to the east. It was moving very irregularly. Suddenly, there was intense light all around me. And when I came to, I was home. What do you think happened to me?
Huh? Let's talk about the only glitch found in Parasite Eve 2 to this day. Honestly, overall this game is very well programmed. There aren't any out of bounds or anything crazy you can do to skip large chunks of the game, but there's just one major exception. The M4A1 is a very versatile weapon. Throughout the game you can get various attachments to it that change the behavior of the R2 button. There's the M9 that turns it into a melee weapon with insane damage. There's the hammer that sends electric shocks that have an AoE and stun enemies. The M203 turns the weapon into a grenade pistol so you can get the best out of both worlds. The pike is a flamethrower that does huge damage and can turn the Puppet Stinger boss into smoked barbecue. And the Javelin is a laser that pierces through enemies and does damage in huge but finite distances. The M4A1 is the game's water Pokemon. It is at the center of the game's meta. In Nightmare difficulty, your life's made infinitely easier if you make decisions that lead to the M4A1 as early as possible. You can get 4 out of 5 attachments above on Nightmare, just not the M203. You can buy the M9 from Douglas if you visit Dryfield after the Glutton fight. You can get the hammer by killing an optional Bishop Golem in Dryfield Night right before the Burner fight. And if you remember, you can get the pike by killing a Night Golem in the breeding room right after getting slapped by the bowman, and the Javelin by killing a Night Golem at the New York Shrine after the beta generator. These are some of the most useful weapons in the game, but one of them is unfortunately so overpowered it actually makes a lot of the game easier. When you fire a Javelin, you do damage once every 6 frames, which adds up to about 100 in total if you have an energy shot. The whole fire animation takes about 2 seconds, which at 30 frames per second means about 10 units of damage. However, if you press the select button at any point where the laser is being fired, the game short circuits and the damage is dealt every frame instead of every 6 frames, essentially multiplying the total damage output 6-fold if you press it as early as possible. Okay, so we have this fight that's like a few turrets and a Pawn Golem. And we have the M4A1 here equipped with the Javelin. So I can fire the Javelin here. So we're gonna use this Pawn Golem as an example. He's gonna fire at us, and while he's reloading, we're gonna shoot at him. The first thing is gonna just to be a normal Javelin shot. Not a lot of damage, 79. Now let's try to press select and see what happens. Right before firing the Javelin, 310 damage. Basically, as soon as you press select, your damage scales up. So let's do something else here. Let's just have, restart this fight, have him fire this. Now I'm gonna try to fire the Javelin, but press select a little later. So we did 37 damage, but as soon as I go out of the select, the damage is going to increase substantially. but we already wasted a few frames, so the damage is gonna be less than what we can get out of. However, if I press select right after firing, I get the advantage of all the frames of the Javelin doing extra damage. And now it's gonna be like super high. In other words, the sooner you press select, the more damage you get out of the Javelin. So what we try to do is just try to press the Javelin firing button, and as soon as humanly possible press select so we get the most damage. And with that we can just do a bajillion damage to a bunch of enemies. That's the Javelin Glitch. With 2 casts of Energy Shot 3, you can do about 500 damage per Javelin, and this goes up to about 750 with Berserk status, which you can get by using an Eau de Toilette. In the new game 80% category, you can only get the Javelin by getting the medicine wheel and backtracking to the south maintenance walkway to defeat a Rook Golem and some turrets. At this point, your only remaining fight is the final boss, which can be demolished with the Mongoose Rupert gives you, so it's not worth the hassle in a speedrun. However, on Nightmare difficulty, the shrine fight that gives the Javelin is a little earlier, and you only need to backtrack a little bit to get to it. Right before leaving Ark, you just need to go down the soft promenade, past the savannah, and there you are. Then, you can buy the M41 at the military, and you have a super powerful weapon to fight the 2 final bosses. This means you no longer need to do the ridiculous 6-minute backtrack to get the M249. You have an even better weapon here. I use the Javelin Glitch pretty extensively on Nightmare 100%, since we can use it from the time we fight the Puppet Stinger all the way to the final boss. It is a very way to kill golems and brain stingers that are lined up, and I think managing your 60 shots through the run makes the routing very interesting. This is the question I get asked most of my Nightmare 100% video comments. Why do you press select when you fire the Javelin? And while I'm sure most viewers who asked the question aren't here to watch the video, I hope I can at least point to this explanation moving forward. And at this point I believe you, dear viewer, can react to this information in one of 2 ways. 1. This is awesome. A huge time-saving strategy that makes the run much more optimized. Considering that you can only use the Javelin in the final boss, it barely changes anything except the annoying backtrack. The final boss fight isn't free with the Javelin either, since you basically die at every hit, so that makes the run much faster and much more interesting. 2. This is stupid. This glitch is easy to do, but is also impossible to do by accident. Doing this glitch basically destroys the entire philosophy of the Nightmare difficulty, and it's a travesty to the very concept of Parasite Eve 2. And honestly I understand both points, and I sincerely think the glitch is a fork on the road for the Nightmare difficulty specifically. I hope to eventually do both glitched and glitchless runs for the Nightmare difficulty, both in 100% and any percent. But please note that at this time, I hadn't even started running Nightmare any percent, though it wasn't my to-do list. Then, on June 2022, Naga comes back with another run. This time bringing the time down from 142.40 to 133.14. Over 9 minutes of time saved. What changed? Well, I'm sure you can guess. Let's dissect the run. Alright, so Naga's tower looks pretty much identical. MP boost 2 in the trash, no more tactical vests, grenades in the box, MP5A5. Whoa! Naga actually skips the Night Golem. This is huge. Until I wrote the script I didn't know this was possible. This is why it's always important to watch every run. You never know when you're going to learn something groundbreaking. Naga opens the menu after 8 chaser fight to buy Pyro 2. No shop at the first Douglas chat. The Mindsuckler fight is absolutely beautiful. 1 Pyro to kill all 3. Pick up the Call and the Recovery 3 and no shop at Douglas again? In the Drive Field number 9 menu, Naga attaches the Cola, Ringer, and MP Boost 2, and buys Necrosis 1. It's worth noting that up until now it looks like Naga is skipping every single fight they opted to do on their original run. Naga defeats Drive Field number 9 with 9 Pyros, using the Cola as an MP heal. Naga kills the bunny without using any MP heals. Naga buys a grenade pistol, riots, a combat light, and 5 pepper sprays when getting the motel lobby key from Douglas. Before the cash register puzzle, Naga opens the menu to attach a combat light and buys Plasma 1. Naga completely skips the holy water. Wow. Naga uses the combat light on the first spider to kill with 2 pyros and a few shots. This seems like a little bit of an overkill for safety, but I guess it decreases your risk of being one shot. Naga buys Energy Shot 1 when opening the menu to fill the jerry can. When the burner fight starts, Naga cleverly uses a pepper spray on the burner to stop any of his attacks and... Oh, wait a sec. Naga, what are you doing? You're not fighting the burner. There's no damage being done here. What's going on? Naga! Naga actually lets Burner kill Flint. Well, I had to lose my Flint death watching virginity to make this video, so I hope you're happy. After After confronting Mr. Douglas in a guilt-ridden cutscene, there's a small detour to check the car trunk and pick up the chicken plate before heading to disc 2. The sad music follows Aya in every room until we swap discs. Moving on to disc 2, when it's time to use the board, Naga buys Energy Shot 2, equips the grenade pistol with riots, attaches the grenades, 3 pepper sprays, and an M93R for the Blizzard Chaser fight. The first stage of the Blizzard Chaser is 1 barrel and 2 pyros. Second stage is 3 barrels with riot rounds, then fire 4 air bursts while keeping him stun locked with 3 pepper sprays. After the second plug, Naga opens the menu to equip the chicken plate, which allows Aya to tank an Ivory Stalker hit like a champ. Who needs dodging when you can route your way around death? Naga still picks up the ringer solution at the storeroom and the cola at the breeding room. Naga picks up the 8 grenades from the box and drops the assault suit and M93R. A menu is open before Glutton. The equips are grenade pistol with grenades, and attachments of PE2 plus Hydras, cola, and 2 pepper sprays. Textbook fight with 8 grenade pistol shots and 1 pyro to kill Glutton 1. Whereas Glutton 2 gets crushed with 3 grenade shots and a compressor surgery for fat reduction. Naga then backtracks to get the medicine wheel, a 1-minute time loss as we established earlier. Naga kills a proton computer with 1 grenade and some PE2 shots, then 3 pyros to finish off the boss. The beta's computer is broken with just PE2. Then Naga finds a magical spot in the angle where pyros do 180 damage to the beta. What? Now Naga takes the detour to the shrine where a night golem awaits Aya. There's a spot in the wall where the golem is programmed to charge at you. He never hits, but he gives you a huge window to fire shots at him. This is the best strategy to kill him so far, as you don't depend on his Ghost aggro RNG as much. The giant boba menu consists of equipping Spartan ammo, healing, attaching Hydras, an eau de toilette, and biometabolism 1. And the fight's very similar to New Game 80%, but slightly longer. With the chicken plate, Naga can skip the protein capsule at Eve, you little shit, because Aya is well protected at this point. We uneventfully make our way to the military. Whoops, got caught by the Bishop Golem on the way to garage. Twice? Naga completely skips the Mongoose and Maeda ammo, heading straight to the shop to buy the M4A1 and 1 pepper spray for a total of 3. Before the final boss fight, there's the typical menu to prepare. M4A1 with Javelin, eau de toilette, and Rigor Solution. Naga doesn't even bother to heal, because Aya has 15 HP, and that's enough to survive Brahm's attacks with the resisting pack feature that the chicken plate provides you. The Brahm fight with the Javelin is super easy. 2 energy shots, 2 javelins to the shoulder, then another pyro to the shoulder to open the core. Once open, Naga decides to use the last of the toilet here, making the core part super quick. Pepper spray, 3 javelins, pepper spray, 3 javelins, done. Without the eau de toilette, an additional pepper spray and 2 javelins would be needed, an extra 7-ish seconds. Before Eve, Naga buys healing 2 and antibody 1, attaches all heals, and dives headfirst into the fight. The Eve fight with Javelin seems easy, but it's surprisingly technical. We obviously start with 2 energy shots, then the idea is to stay in the middle of the bridge and stop her from teleporting. But if you have the chicken plate, you don't need to do any of that shit. Just let her hit you, you can tank it. If your HP goes below 5, just pop a heal and keep doing your thing. That's one of the huge fortes of the chicken plate. The Eve fight becomes as straightforward as it gets. Final time, 1 hour, 33 minutes and 14 seconds. Certainly faster than Sigma's run given the slower loads, but with the clear unfair advantage of the Javelin Glitch. Naga's run has been posted in June 2022, but it wasn't until about last year that player iMain Leesin found out about it and decided to beat it. Leesin was either convinced enough that the chicken plate route was the fastest when paired with the Javelin Glitch, or he didn't feel like saving Flint was enough motivation to lab another route. So he embarked on a journey to beat Naga's time, but not just beat it, crush it. Not to dunk on Naga's run too much, but there was clearly a lot of room for optimization. Lots of unnecessary menus, and areas that could probably be compressed, and some questionable choices in magic and weapons to fight bosses, which Leesin would work toward making airtight. On March 10, 2026, Leesin achieved a time that to this day remains the PS2 world record for Nightmare 80%. Let's dissect it. Okay, so the story is pretty much the same as everyone else's. Get the ammo, MP Boost 2, skip the tactical vest in the observatory, get the grenades, get the MP5A5. Leesin's number 9 fight is a carbon copy of Naga's, which I believe is indeed the fastest way to beat this boss without any magic, except you're starting Pyro 1. In Dryfield, the first time Leesin opens the menu is before the Breezeway Chaser to buy Pyro 2, which makes both the Mind Suckler and this Chaser fight a tiny bit faster. Leesin gets the Cola in the general store but no Recovery 3. At the Dryfield number 9 menu, Leesin attaches a Cola, the MP Boost 1, a Recovery 1, and a Pepper Spray, then buys Necrosis 1. His fight with number 9 is done with the use of the MP Boost 1 and 9 Pyros. When getting the lobby key from Mr. Douglas, Leesin buys a Grenade Pistol and 4 Riots, as well as a Combat Light and 6 Pepper Sprays. Before the cash register password, Leesin also opens the menu to buy Plasma 1 and attaches a Combat Light to fight the Zebra Stalkers, essentially mimicking Naga's strategy. Leesin then proceeds to ignore the Holy Water, get the empty jerry can, and head to the gas station. In the gas station, Leesin uses the Combat Light for the first Stalker and 3 Pyros for the second. The jerry can is used to buy Energy Shot 1 for the burner fight. No shopping at the garage Douglas, straight to burner. And then there's the burner fight, which Leesin unfortunately plays exactly like Naga's and, well, we can just skip to disc 2. I just can't go through this again. I'll just add that Leesin stops to get the chicken plate before swapping discs. When using the board, the Blizzard Chase's preparation menu is equip grenade pistols with riots, attach grenades, 2 pepper sprays in the M93R, and bump energy shot to level 2. The fight itself is identical to Naga's. 1 barrel for phase 1, 3 for phase 2, then 2 pepper sprays after the last barrel to keep the boss stunned, and force feed him some grenades and pyros while Necrosis ticks down his HP. Another menu is open after the plug puzzle to equip the chicken plate and tank the Ivory Stalker swipe. Except Leesin dodges the Stalker like a champ, proving that you actually don't need the chicken plate to survive this part. In the shelter, Leesin picks up the storeroom ringer, the breeding room cola, and the grenades in the sterilization room box, which is also used to drop a bunch of junk. Before the glutton, Leesin picks up the hydras and opens the menu to prepare for the fight. A grenade reload, use of a heal, attachment of the P229 with hydra rounds, and the attachment of 3 more heals. Phase 1 glutton is done the same way as always, with 8 grenade rounds in the mouth, split between 3 absorbing attacks. The glutton 2 fight is also done similar to Naga, 3 grenades for dinner, then the panini machine for dessert. I should note that Leesin's poison hit here really highlights how much safer the chicken plate makes this fight. Normally that will kill you with 1 hit, or 2 if you had the holy water, but here you're perfectly safe as long as you have over 5 HP. Crucially though, Leesin completely skips the medicine wheel, thus forfeiting the eau de toilette warranted by the puppet stinger and the other extra heal to get from some fights. In the arc, Leesin's route is identical to Naga's, but he found a line in the arc that prevents the Night Golem from choking you. He also got bodied by the beetles, but since he has the chicken plate, who the hell cares? Before the puppet stinger, the moss pack is killed with 4 pyros. The pre-fight menu is equip Spartan ammo for the P229, heal, attach the eau de toilette, and bump energy shot to level 3. The use of the eau de toilette in this fight means that his and Naga's puppet stinger fight are identical, but Leesin will have no more berserks for the subsequent bosses. Leesin gets an extra ringer solution in Eve's room, then rushes toward the military without much fanfare. He also skips the mongoose and goes straight to the military shop, where he gets the M4A1, and that's pretty much it. The menu before the Brahm is equip M4A1 with Javelin, attach 3 pepper sprays in a ringer solution, then buy Metabolism 1, Healing 1, and Antibody 1. Don't even need to heal because you can tank Brahms 1 and only laser before opening the core. The Brahm fight is done very similar to Naga, but without the eau de toilette, Leesin needs an extra pepper spray to do 3500 damage to the core and finish the fight. Before using the keycard to start the final battle, Leesin heals his remaining 1 HP, attaches all the remaining heals, buys healing 2, and heads straight to the battle. The Eve fight is identical to Naga's. No attempts to stop her from traveling. Just spam Javelin, and either pop a heal or cast Metabolism or Healing if you go under 5 HP. Final time, 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 17 seconds.
A new warrior has entered the ring!
Even my patience has its limits. I just can't leave this thing up to you any longer. I'll do the fighting. You can just go home.
At this point, it seems like all active players are dead set on the idea that the chicken plate is optimal for Nightmare 80%. But this is just not adding up to me. My ear felt itchy, like there was a flea on it. Set aside the moral implications of sacrificing your polygonal best boy to get the fame and status of a world record holder, you need to intentionally lose a bunch of time in the burner fight. I get the logic that the chicken plate makes the entire second disc much safer, but is it true that it's also the fastest route? Or are we just too comfortable with the fact that we're basically immortal with this armor? If we don't get the chicken plate, what is the bare minimum we need to add to the run to survive all the way to the end? That's what I wanted to find out. My approach was to build a route from scratch, borrowing as much as possible from what I know to work on New Game 80%. Up until this point, I had only played Nightmare 100% and New Game 80%, because I was too scared to run Nightmare 80% and keep dying if an enemy so much as looks at me the wrong way. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, but I decided to take a crack at devising a route for Nightmare 80%. Here's my philosophy. I would try to skip as many off-route items as possible, but I would try to compensate by doing as many battles as I can to get enough experience to unlock high damaging magic and accelerate the boss fights. Some bosses seem hard, but they're mostly all bark and no bite if you know what you're doing. Tower number 9 is mostly consistent if you hit all the wires. Driver number 9 can be killed with 9 pyros pretty consistently if you learn the timing of the stun lock. It's also faster to fire 2 pyros for 366 damage than to let yourself get choked by him. Burner can be stun locked by the PE2 if you decide to be a man and save Flint. Blizzard chases as RNG as New Game 80%. Though missing a barrel here is much more devastating given the scarcity of high damage ammo. Glutton 1 is only slightly dependent on your rolling high-ish grenade pistol damage so that she dies before walking all the way to the end of the room. Glutton 2 has some RNG moves that she gets crushed, but we can maximize our odds of good attacks with proper movement. Puppet Stinger is very similar to Stunlock the New Game 80%, but he requires a lot of MP to keep hitting Plasma on Eve and breaking his antibody. Brahm is basically free, and Eve is Eve. Nothing much we can do there. So what I was hoping to show is that you could finish the entire game with just the starting armor from Dry Field. The Assault Suit gives you plus 0 HP, plus 10 MP, resist poison, and 5 attachments. I wanted to find out why people were always resorting to doing big detours to pick up armors, and if you could instead just keep healing and doing safe lines to avoid all the big detours in the game. Except possibly the ones to find weapons to fight Eve. The second major part of my routing will be to do a few quick optional fights. These will, with a few exceptions, be in rooms we visit multiple times. The idea here is that the time we lose during the fight will be compensated by the fact that we will trigger fewer fights. Since the game is measured in RTA, every time a fight triggers the black and white screen, it's a 2-second time loss. There's an additional 1 to 3 second time loss when we exit the room and the results screen appears showing we lost BP and gained 1 MP. If we visit a room multiple times then, it makes sense to sometimes do the fight to save on the additional battle triggers. This will hopefully also give us some extra experience and BP that we can use to buy stronger magic, more guns, ammo, flares, and pepper sprays, thus making the boss fights faster. The fights I chose to do are the Well Bats before the Stalker. We could do this fight with a single necrosis. The Exploding Babies in the general store. We can do this one with 1 pyro and 1 shot, and we visit this room a total of 3 times. The Bats in the parking. This room we visit 3 times total. The Zebra Stalkers in the balcony before getting the jerry can. This fight takes a while, but we triggered it again on the way back, and it gives you a ton of XP. And that's about it, no extra fights on disc 2. Besides that, I'll try to open the menu as little as possible, and try to zero in on the minimum number of healing items I'll need to survive. So let's go through what I came up with. In the tower, I picked up my training wheels which I'll eventually carry with me the whole time. The recovery 2 in the tower prevents us from resetting if we get hit by either Kim Kardashian or by the rats in the blue key room. The recovery we already start with needs to be used at the bridge when we get hit by the fish, but if we get another hit before this, we'll get 1 shot by the fish, so that additional recovery allows us to heal when we equip the MP5A5, thus allowing us more attempts past this point. Besides that, I pick up the 4 grenades in the MP5, but I skip the tactical vest. The MP5 will be exchanged for a ringer solution, and the tactical vest becomes a belt pouch that would be useful, but not really deal breaking to skip. In Dry Field, I will unlock Necrosis 1 and Pyro 2 when doing the rope menu. That means I'll only have Pyro 1 for both the Breezeway Chaser fight and the Mindsuckler fight. I'm not 100% convinced that this is the fastest to be honest, but it's what mostly resembles my new game 80% route. When I first meet Douglas, I'll buy the PE2 for Burner and a flare for the nighttime parking bats. I will not do the Sigma detour to pick up the Snail magazine. We'll fight the Burner with 7 rounds in a clip. In the Dry Field number 9 menu, I'll attach the PE2 with PB routes, the flare, the MP Boost 1, and the Cola. On number 9 I use the MP Boost 2 to get 9 Pyro 2s behind his back. Very textbook. For the 12 bunnies fight, I prefer to eat the Cola here and spam as many Pyros as I can instead of shooting. You see later that I'll be able to get away with only losing 1 MP heal on the Burner, which is the ringer solution we got from the MP5A5 early at the tower. I use the flare attached to kill the bats, just like we do in New Game 80%. I'll get the holy water once I get to the loft, which costs me 10 seconds if I do the puzzle quickly. I'll do an extra menu to equip the holy water as soon as I get it, but this menu will be strategic. You see, I can burn up all my MP on the Zebra Stalkers at the balcony, and opening the menu here, I can unlock Necrosis 2 and refill my MP, which I can then use fully at the next 2 Zebra Stalkers. At the gas station, I will buy Energy Shot 1 in addition to using the jerry can. This route is very satisfying because I'm able to carry both Necrosis 2 and Energy Shot 1 to Burner, and end up with exactly 0 XP, meaning that the fight route we devise is the exact amount necessary for us to buy Pyro 2, Necrosis 1 and 2, and Energy Shot 1. Nice! After giving the full jerry can to Mr. Douglas, we buy the grenade pistol, riots, and 1 pepper spray. Then we head to bed. For Burner, we cast Energy Shot 1 twice, and then Necrosis 2. With only 7 rounds in the PE2 clip, we need to fire 2 clips and then recast Necrosis, hoping we not get hit by his flames, which will bring you down to 5 HP and force you to use a recovery lest you die at another hit. When we're down to 4 MP, we use the Ringer solution, which hopefully syncs up with any damage you may receive, since the Ringer solution also restores your HP. Once you fire 2 more Necrosis and go down to 31 MP, he should be close to going to his second phase. We have 4 Necrosis left for this phase, but if we run out of Energy Shot, it's fastest to recast it twice since the Energy Shot damage buff adds significantly more damage than the Necrosis sticks. Besides being able to sleep at night by saving Flint, killing Burner also rewards you with an extra 1000 XP and 1000 BP, as well as 4 air bursts. While the money is useless, the experience in the extra grenade will definitely come in handy later. Heading to disc 2, we pass the 11 chasers and find the board to fix the hole in the bridge. The Blizzard Chaser menu will have us equip the grenade pistol with riots, attach the air bursts, attach 2 pepper sprays, and buy both Plasma 1 and Energy Shot 2. Our Blizzard Chaser fight is very similar to those of Naga and Leesin, except we will use the air bursts instead of the grenades when we hit the last barrel, and stun lock the chaser with pepper sprays. Each air burst does about 135 damage per shot, and 4 air bursts will finish him off. We'll have the remaining grenades left over for down the line. Heading to the shelter, we need to dodge the spider. Here's where the chickens come home to roost for me. Without the chicken plate, we need to play almost perfectly throughout the shelter because even with the holy water, almost anything kills you instantly. The cyber stalker encounter is inconsequential with the chicken plate because you're guaranteed to survive her hit. But here, if you mess up, you're dead. I practice this dodge like crazy. Hug the left wall, as soon as the camera change, hold up and left, then steer IA to the right fully to avoid the swipe hitbox. I lost some good paces to this dodge, and it's certainly not evident to do it consistently, but that's the price we're willing to pay here to save Flint. In the shelter, we'll also skip the storeroom ringer solution, which allows us to prevent a fight trigger. We will, however, pick up the cola in the breeding room. I also found a way to skip the B1 How fight trigger by walking slightly before starting. This was the nice thing about making this route, finding possible small time saves other players may have missed. On the way to Glutton, we pick up the 8 grenades from the sterilization room and drop all the junk we can. This will be important later to ensure we have enough space to buy pepper sprays in the military for our favorite giant baby. Before the Glutton fight, we open the menu to prepare. We pick up the Hydras, then equip our empty grenade pistol with regular grenades, attach the P229 with Hydras, and add a recovery 2 for safety. The first phase of the Glutton fight is identical to Leesin's. The second phase is also very similar. 3 grenades and a pyro, and it should be enough. Sadly, I had terrible RNG and had to endure 3 acid attacks, which translates to a 15-second tax. Moving on to the reservoir, we can't afford to get hit by the bog diver blocking the way, so we need to do this additional fight with 2 pyros. After climbing up the elevator with Kyle, we need to go through a series of rooms with enemies that will attack you, and most of them can kill with 1 or 2 hits. First, we pass a hallway full of creeping strangers, skull stalkers, and slouches. The slouches have a super high range slap that can occur randomly with the aggro. Here I was very proud of myself for finding that. If you hug the wall, you can consistently pass this hallway without getting hit. Then, we move to the operating room. Here we have more failed NMCs, the most concerning of which is a slouch right in front of the lab coat containing the eau de toilette. On new game 80% runs, this guy almost always aggros. But if you take a slightly longer route, you'll aggro another slouch, and they cannot attack you simultaneously, which guarantees the most problematic slouch won't attack you, and you can safely check the lab coat. This is also convenient because there's a ringer solution in this longer path. We can pick this one up instead of the one in the storeroom. We then do the super easy lab puzzle, E3ILMS2S2Y. Do some Parasite Eve lore trivia, and tell Kyle to go take a hike. Now we need to pass through 2 more moss bags. Here, you need to be lucky too. These guys are usually no problem if they either chill or swipe at you as you're crossing them. But they have this attack, the armpit fart, which has a huge AoE range that hits you multiple times if you try to cross them. It's rare that they do this, but you need to roll the dice twice in 2 rooms to get to the pod service gantry. After unlocking doors and disabling the turrets, we head to Shambhala. Here, because we have more grenades, we can actually destroy the computer faster than the chicken plate route. These other guys need to fire with the P229 from afar, which takes forever, whereas we can fire 2 grenades and consistently destroy it. The proto skill is similar with 2 or 3 pyros depending on the damage roll. The beta generator is also killed similarly, but when I was grinding, I did not know of Naga's magical position where pyros do 180 damage, so I fired 4 pyros instead. But yeah, so here's the thing about Shambhala. This is the point where we're introduced to everyone's favorite enemy in the game, the beetles. These fuckers come in packs of 10-ish, each packing a whooping 280 HP. Standing in front of them doesn't really make them notice you, and thus no fight is triggered. However, if you run into one of them by accident, the fight triggers and you take damage. What's worse, these fuckers randomly jump back, and if you're caught in the line of jump, it's a hit and a fight trigger, which will set you back about 4 seconds. You can also get hit multiple times in a single room with beetles, since they're often large hallways containing dozens of beetles sprinkled throughout the room. On New Game 80%, we had to go through 3 beetle rooms, and the optimal route is often to assess the situation and stop when needed so they give you space to pass. On Nightmare mode, however, we're choosing to go back to the shrine for the Javelin, which means we need to pass through the Savannah beetles another 2 times for a total of 5 beetle rooms, all of which can demolish our HP. With the chicken plate, the most catastrophic outcome will have you take some damage and lose some time, but in our case, too many beetle hits are deadly, so playing cautiously is even more important. Back on the shrine, we actually have some extra grenades we can spend on the Night Golem before switching to the P229 and finishing him off. This allows us to depend a little less on the crit RNG, and consequently on how often the Golem aggros instead of just trolling us with his ghost silhouette. I think this is another point for the Flint route. We then make our way to the Puppet Stinger fight. Before starting, we open the menu once more. We equip the Spartan ammo, attach both the cola from the breeding room and the ringer solution from the operating room, and buy Energy Shot 3. My strategy here was to go ham on casting magic and gobbling up MP boosts. I cast Energy Shot twice, and Plasma on Eve to break the boss's antibody. Then, after each Plasma, I also cast Necrosis 2. Considering that the sound turrets drain your MP, you burn through it extremely fast, which is why it's useful to have 2 MP boost items here. With Necrosis, we have additional DPS, but we sort of break even on NP's Penny because his damage ticks also break the antibody and prevent him from attacking. I think it may still have been wiser to use the Eau de Toilette here, but now it is what it is. After the boss fight, we get to Eve's room. I'll skip the ringer solution here and go straight to the Eve you little shit room. Here, I need to make a quick detour to pick up a protein capsule. This will be necessary for us to survive the Braum attack. I decided to go pick up the capsule after talking to Eve because she always takes a little while to start walking, so we can make use of that time. The path to the military is straightforward.
No! Fucker!
At the military, I stopped to talk to Rupert and ask for his mongoose, which is something that chicken plate players don't need to do. I head to the most important shop in the game and buy the M4A1 and 2 pepper sprays. Our frugal item route will guarantee we have enough space for both of them. Now we make our way to the pod service gantry, where we get shot by Kyle. Here we do our final menu. Equip the M4A1 with a Javelin, use the protein capsule to heal, attach 3 pepper sprays, and buy antibody 1 and 2. The Braum fight seems scary, but if we trust the process, it's actually very consistent and easy. We cast antibody 2 once, and energy shot twice. The starting attack is either the gas from the shoulder, which doesn't hit you, or the laser, which does. Either way, you do these 2 attacks in whichever order. If you cast antibody and have 55 HP, you go down to 4. At this point, you already did enough damage to the shoulder to destroy it, and another pyre to the same shoulder opens the core. Here, we do the same strategy as the other players. Pepper spray, 3 javelins, pepper spray, 3 javelins, pepper spray, 3 javelins. Now it's time for the final menu of the game. We first heal from our 4 HP back to 55, then we attach the Eau de Toilette and the mongoose with my other rounds. And that's it, we're ready to rock and roll. If you ever ran this game, you know that the final boss fight is where the run actually starts. This rascal is extremely random and erratic, and in this difficulty, if she so much as breathes next to you, you're dead. With the exception of one move, this has to be a no damage fight. Eve has a measly 12,500 HP. Until you do half of this value in damage, she's pretty easy. She has only 3 attacks, falling from the sky, traveling, and praying. If she falls from the sky, you take less damage the farther away from the center of the bridge you are. Getting closer also makes I either get slingshot into the corner of the map, fall down, or simply get a light stun. This is the best attack because after she falls, there's a small window where she takes extra damage and likelier crits from hits. It starts when she's upside down and ends after she electrocutes herself. We take advantage of those windows to go ham with the javelins. If she tries to travel, we need to stop her. Otherwise, she takes way too long to show up again, and that's time wasted we could be doing damage. Furthermore, she can teleport sideways multiple times before showing up in the middle to conclude the traveling. We can stop her from traveling either by firing Necrosis or shooting with the mongoose. Here I use the mongoose, both because the damage is higher and because the window to shoot it is more forgiving since Necrosis has a startup firing animation. Let's be real though, I just didn't know that Necrosis worked, so I had to use my only resources. If you miss the window to stun her, she'll travel, and with 55 HP, that's an insta-kill. This is also where the chicken plate shines. Swapping between weapons requires you to pause and select another weapon. When you unpause, the game has to reload Dia's character model with a new weapon, resulting in extremely long loading times. If she prays, you can just fire with the javelin until she stops. We also need to stay far away from Eve at all times. If not, she'll try to slap you. Now in typical runs, this causes paralysis, which is a terrible status that makes Aya gasp for air randomly. But in our route, we don't need to worry about that, as a slap will guarantee we'll be dead at 55 HP. As we reach the second half of the Eve fight, she starts using a few new attacks. At 6,250 HP, she starts flying up and down, then firing beams that cause random statuses. And let me tell you, these beams are basically impossible to dodge, so if you allow her to use this attack, it's over. However, you can actually stop her from attacking by either firing with the mongoose or hitting Necrosis as soon as she goes down and before she flips to her normal position. This is where it starts getting very confusing because now every time she flies up, it's very hard to tell if she'll slam the ground or if she'll come back to use the beam attack. It wasn't until I got my PB that I learned that you can actually tell based on where Aya is aiming, but you need to think very fast. If she's going to use the beam, you need to be quick to swap to the mongoose, so Aya has enough time to do the weapon raising animation and leave enough time for you to shoot Eve and stop her from attacking. She has other 2 attacks, one where she gets across the bridge and crosses, which is easy to dodge but you have to make sure you're not too close to her when she crosses, lest you get slapped and die, and as her HP gets lower than 3000, she can make clones of herself. Clones will chase you around relentlessly and slap you, so it's imperative that you kill them before continuing to attack Eve. Each clone has 350 HP, so they can die with 1 javelin. You can also fire Necrosis at the clones, which gives you a 50-50 chance of hitting for 999 HP and instantly killing them. The second half of this fight is pure chaos. To gain some control over it, I try to stay in the middle of the bridge as often as possible, which biases her AI toward using the Skyfall attack. However, because I'm never sure if that's the attack she's going for, I always swap to the mongoose on the off chance she'll come down to use the beams. This adds up a lot through the fight, since every time I'm wrong, I have to swap back to the Javelin, and this constant pausing and weapon switching is a huge cumulative tax. With 2 energy shots, each Javelin hit does about 550 HP of damage, and with Berserk status, this value goes up to about 700. If we use the Eau de Toilette, we need to hit about 20 Javelins throughout the fight. The strategy here is to pay very close attention to what she's doing. Every time she picks an attack that can be stopped by the Mongoose, that's what we should do. If she crosses the bridge, we use the time to renew our energy shot, since this fight is so long we will eventually run out. Keep firing, and hope that the combination of all her attack choices adds up to a somewhat quick and safe fight. I'll spare you the details on how long it took me to get this time. I'll just say the instant deaths are very real, and it took me weeks of practice despite having prior experience with New Game 80%. But then, on May 24, 2006, I achieve this run. Fusing my PR. Yes! Fuck! No! Fuck! 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 Yes! We did it! Mission complete! Let's recap the Flint route changes. We obviously make a much quicker burner fight, which grants us 4 extra air bursts and saves us a trip to the junkyard to get the chicken plate. But in exchange, we have 2. Get the holy water in the loft, kill a bug diver in the reservoir, pick up a protein capsule that give you little shit, get the mongoose from Rupert, buy antibody 2 before the Brian fight and use it before we can attack him. Do a bunch of weapon switcheroos on Eve to kindly stop her from murdering us at various points in the fight. Not to mention the obvious necessity of dodging the ivory stalkers and getting lucky on beetles, mossback armpit farts, slouch swipes, and even mundane things like doing a perfect line in the first visit to the sleeping quarters, lest this jerk of a stranger bites your arm. So after all, did we prove that our route is faster? Or was it all a shaggy dog story? This requires addressing the obvious greyhound in the room. Is my runs faster? Or does my Duckstation simply have faster loads than the PS2? Internet searches on speedrunning forums do show that this issue has been brought up previously, but as far as I can tell there is no conclusive answer. Or the answer may change from game to game. Duckstation's emulation code is deeply entrenched to stimulating the PS1, which itself has slower load times than the PS2, and bypassing this may break some games that depend on the loading time. But we can be more pragmatic. We can actually use the game's audio and fade transitions to make exact cuts in both mine and Leesin's video. If Duckstation's loads are slower, we have proven that we have a faster run. If not, we still have work to do. So let's do that for a few of the door transitions in the game, and maybe we can come to a more general conclusion. So from what I can tell in these loads, everything is roughly off by plus or minus 1 frame, which I can also attribute to my uncertainty in where to cut, since Leesin's audio and Duckstation's audio emulation also has slight differences from the way the two games are being cast. However, I have to acknowledge that me playing with the keyboard does give me an advantage. With 10 controls, steering eye precisely is super important to optimize lines in every room, and having 3 fingers for the WASD keys instead of just your thumb does give me an advantage that's not accessible to PS2 players. Not because I'm doing something they can't, but rather because it's easier for me to do it optimally. I also can bind keys to the analog stick, which allows me to do faster point and click puzzles. They can do that too, but the analog stick's continuous nature also makes it harder for them to do precise movements than it is for me. With all that, I would say I did find a route that is at very least equivalent to the chicken plate, but I'll leave it up to you to decide if I made a convincing enough point. Right now, I like to focus on something arguably more important.
Honestly though, you have played the game for a long time. Don't you have anything else to do with your time?
The process of making this video forced me to study many of the previous runs in great detail, and as a result, I learned many things I can do better. This is why I always like to watch other beginner runners or casual players exploring games I'm already experienced at running. You never know when someone will do something you never thought of because your gameplay is calcified by existing strategies. I learned from Naga that I can save time in Acropolis using a very specific line to avoid triggering the golem fight. I can't stress enough how huge it is, and I can't believe neither I nor Leesin paid attention to this strat that's been there for years now. I am strongly considering the extra menu to buy PE2 before the Breezeway Chaser because I may be able to make up for this by using PE2 on both the Chaser and the Mind Sucklers. I also learned from Naga that I can skip the Brain Stinger fight trigger in Dry Field Night, which saves about 4 seconds completely for free. I learned about the magic beta generator position where you can fire pyros for 180 damage a pop. I learned from Sigma's run that you can stun Eve with necrosis, which means I don't have to swap weapons to stop her from flying. This is absolutely huge, since the weapon swapping is by far where I'm losing the most time compared to the Chicken Play players. Besides the examples learned from standing on the shoulders of giants, I've also gotten better at predicting what Eve will do when she flies up. It turns out that paying attention to where Aya aims will tell us if she'll fall on the bridge or use the beams. Getting good at this strategy will significantly reduce the number of weapon swaps we need to do, and maybe even allow us to skip the mongoose entirely like the Chicken Plate route. Obviously this will make the Eve fight much scarier than it already is, since the necrosis timing is much stricter than the mongoose. But man, if we can do it, I think we can bring this time to as low as a 126, thus definitely proving that this route is viable. I could in theory do a few Chicken Plate runs myself. This would allow me to compare the strategies more objectively, since biases in platform and playstyle would be taken out of the equation. But I just can't do it. I don't ever want to break my Flint saving streak. I know this may sound so insanely stupid to most of you, but I'm old enough now to have lived through the entire lifespan of some of my childhood pets. And I'm getting to the point where these things kinda hit me harder than they used to. If you have pets, don't forget to give them lots of love and enjoy every second with them. It goes faster than you think. And please tell them I said hi. Also, please play Fatal Frame 3. Okay, so there's Ruri the cat, right? And in the game she can give you her paw, and you can take pictures of her to make a little photo album, and you can also buy little cosmetic items to make her look so freaking cute, and sometimes she's grumpy and won't talk to you. She also meows at the ghost, and okay, I'll shut up, roll the outro.
Actually, I'm in really bad shape financially. I pay money to my ex-wife as part of our divorce settlement, among other bills. I just had no choice but to make you pay for lunch the other day. I'm really sorry.